Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1492A, and today's date is February 7th, 2018, and the title of the episode is The Hidden Economic Agenda is Now Being Pushed. Will it succeed? Now, before I get started, I just want to make an announcement. I uploaded a new interview with Rob Kirby. It is on the X22 Report Spotlight YouTube channel. So if you go over to YouTube and you type in X22 Report Spotlight, you can view and listen to the interview there, or you can come over to the X22Report.com or NewSentinel.com websites. Scroll down a little bit, look over to your right-hand side. You can play the interview right on the site, or you can go to Steemit. That is steemit.com/@X22Report, and you can play the interview right on Steemit. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we do realize that there are two different agendas being played out here. We have the cabal wrapped up with the central banks, which is the deep state. We also have the Trump administration. And the corporate media is the mouthpiece of the deep state and the central bank system. We see a change of guards. We see Yellen is out from the Federal Reserve. She was the Federal Reserve chairman. And now we see Powell is in. So everything is changing. We also understand that Trump has Andrew Jackson hanging on his wall in the White House. Now, this is done on purpose because Andrew Jackson was the president that got rid of the central banking system. And we can see, and I do believe, that this is the real hidden agenda behind all of this, is to get rid of the central bank, or take control of the central bank, or prove the central bank is not working for the American people. Now, we're going to discuss this a little bit later in this report, but let's get right into what is happening in the economy. Now, last month in November, U.S. credit card debt had just surpassed the previous all-time high hit in July 2008. And that happened right before everything fell apart, when Lehman filed for bankruptcy and things started to rapidly disintegrate. Today, well, we've passed that already. December total consumer credit increased by less than expected, $20 billion, but it was still an impressive $18.5 billion, of which $5.1 billion was credit card debt and $13.3 billion non-revolving or student loan auto loans. More importantly, with the latest $5.1 billion increase in revolving credit card debt, the total is now $1.027 trillion, the highest number on record, higher than where we were prior to the 2008 crash. And what we see right now is that the personal savings rate, we are down to 2008 levels. So we have credit card debt very high, student loan debt very high, savings rate plummeting. Now, with the student loans, we can see that the student loan bubble is continually getting larger. It is bursting right now. Record numbers of Americans enrolling in government-subsidized student loan debt forgiveness plans, known as income-driven repayment, are on track to send the U.S. student loan program into negative territory. Now, this is coming from the Department of Education Inspector General. And the plans known as income-driven repayment, these are set monthly payments as a percentage of borrowers' earnings and typically forgive balances after 10 to 25 years, depending on the borrower's career field and debt amounts and all that. Overall, borrowers in income-driven repayment will repay less than what they originally borrowed. Now, think about this for a second. They needed to modify the student loans for the students coming out of college because they could not find a high-paying job. They couldn't pay back anything. So they had to modify the loans to make it easier for them to repay, but they're going to pay back a lot less than they borrowed because the system is not working the way it's supposed to be working. It's breaking down. And what I mean by this, even though the unemployment number is around 4.1%, it makes no difference because the jobs, the quality of jobs, It's absolutely terrible. And those individuals coming out of college, they're having a very difficult time finding those high-paying jobs. They're getting part-time jobs, and this is why we're seeing this. Now, what we're seeing right now is nearly 40% of student loans taken out in 2004 may default by 2023, according to the report by Brookings Institute. And this is going to blow past all previous projections. Now, approximately 5% of undergraduates took out private student loans in 2004, which swelled to 14% of undergraduates by 2008. Now, private student loans, as opposed to federal student loans, are unable to participate in income-driven government repayment programs. The federal student loan system had originally been projected to turn a profit of about $25 billion on all loans made up to September 30th, 2015. However, that number has been revised down to $5 billion. So they were supposed to turn a profit of $25 billion. It's been revised down to $5 billion. And this is according to the IG report. The income-driven repayment program alone will cost the government $11.5 billion in revenue. Now, the data shows the total cost for all loans, approaching an overall positive subsidy, which translates to a net cost to taxpayers. Basically, the program is going into the red. And what we're seeing right now is that all of this is starting to fall apart, and it has been falling apart for quite a while. And it's not going to improve anytime soon, because when you're living in this illusionary world and you're pretending that everyone has a job and everyone has a high-paying job, and you're pretending that the student loan problem doesn't exist and everyone's paying back their loans, even though they're modifying everything to make it look like it, we have this major problem. Now, think about this. Student loans, credit cards, auto loans, all built on an illusion. People are defaulting. There are delinquencies. They're accelerating now over time. It's getting worse. And think about what Congress just did. Well, we know there's a tax cut. Trump pushed through his tax plan. But Congress just voted to increase spending by $200 billion. How is this going to work? It can't. Now, think about this for a second. When Obama entered the White House, the U.S. national debt was over $10.6 trillion. When he left the White House 8 years later, it was around $20 trillion. So during those 8 years, more than $9 trillion was added to the national debt. But for the purpose of this example, we'll round down to an even $9 trillion. When you divide $9 trillion by 8, you get an average of about $1.125 trillion that was added to the national debt per year during the Obama era. Dividing that figure by 365, you find that an average of $3 billion was added to the national debt every single day during the Obama administration. And if you take that and you divide it by hours, there are 24 hours in a day. That means that there's an average of about 128 million, which was stolen from our children and our grandchildren every single hour of every single day while Obama was president. And we can see this is not changing. It is continuing. And we are seeing the debt continually moving up. And they can't stop, because if they stop borrowing, everything comes crashing down in a split second. And they know this. They understand this. And we also have to understand a lot of this currency that was borrowed, it's gone missing. About 21 trillion, probably even more than that, but that's what they've researched and this is what they found. And we see we're heading into a major problem here. The economy cannot be sustained the way it is. And we see right now the whole hidden agenda behind all of this is, one, control the narrative of the entire story of how the economy is going to come down, to prepare us for a transition, and eventually get rid of the central bank. Now, we know in the past there have been individuals that have pushed a bill to audit the Fed. And every time it has failed, because we shouldn't know what this private central bank is doing for the people of the United States. It's none of our business. All we need to do is continually pay taxes for all the money that they created out of thin air, which they attach interest to. So we have no right to this. Well, we do have a right to this. If they're handling the economy, we should know what they're doing with all this currency that they're creating, who they're giving it to, why they've given it. We should know all of it. And we know that they've tried this before and it's always been shot down. Why? Because the Fed, it's a private corporation. They don't want to be audited because they're hiding things. So what we're seeing right now is Representative Tom Massey and Senator Rand Paul. They have reintroduced the legislation to audit the Fed. Now, they tried this before with different Congresses, with different presidents. But this time around, we can see we have a different Fed president, we have a different president, and we have a different Congress. Now, Trump is all for auditing the Fed. He agrees with Rand Paul. And we can see this time around, this bill might get through. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but they're going to make an attempt. Now, Congress is basically Republican right now. Trump is on board with this. Rand Paul knows this. And I believe this is the beginning stages of trying to bring down the central bank. And you have to start someplace. You need to have this bill passed so you can audit to find out what they have been doing and expose the Federal Reserve to the country to show that they were up to no good. And you have to start very slowly. You need to start a little bit at a time. Just like with the FISA memo and everything else. You just can't come out and say, hey, let's get rid of them. Because what's the reasoning for it? I mean, yes, we know the reasons, but most of America does not. So a little bit at a time, and I think this is the hidden agenda. This is why Andrew Jackson is hanging on the wall in the White House, because their main agenda, is to get rid of the central bank, because the central bank is the root of all evil. What they have done to our country, they have destroyed it. What the central banks around the world, what they have done, they have destroyed countries. And people say, well, how do they destroy them? When you create currency out of thin air by pushing a button, or before they had a printing press, and you attach interest to the currency, there is not enough of this currency out there to ever repay it. It's impossible. If they print up $100 and they say you owe $125 or $110 or $105, where do you get the extra $5 if it doesn't exist? Well, you have to borrow more. And if you borrow more, now you owe more interest. And what they do is they continue this on over time. And over time, this system breaks down. Now, let's not even talk about what else they've done, because we don't know what they've done. I mean, yes, we have some idea what the central banks have been doing, but they have the ability to create currency, to pay off certain government individuals, to keep them quiet, to keep them on their side. Because think about it. Why in the world would these government employees support a private corporation if there's nothing in it for them? Why would they reject an audit bill? It makes no sense unless they're receiving funds, unless they're receiving tips, unless they're in the pockets of the central bank. And this is what we are seeing right now. We are seeing the corruption due to the central banking system. That's what this system does. And they corrupt the leaders, so the leaders are on the side of the central banking system. And this way, they're assured that, guess what? They'll never get rid of us. But now we see things could be changing. We see there's a different agenda. We see, and hopefully, this audit bill this time around will pass. This audit bill will make it to the president. This audit bill will be signed by the president to look into the books of the Federal Reserve, to try to find out what they are up to, and slowly bring out all this information to enable us to shut it down. And I do believe this has been the real agenda all along, and I think this is where everything is headed. Don't know if we'll reach it, but this is where we're headed. This is why he has Andrew Jackson hanging on the wall in the White House, because he was the president who campaigned on getting rid of the central bank. Now today, the central bank is much, much larger, has been in power much longer, and it's intertwined with the deep state, the cabal, and everything else. So we're going to have to see how this plays out, how far this audit bill gets, but I do believe the time is right. I do believe that this time it might make it through, and we might have an actual audit of the Fed. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.